We're live.
Welcome guys to IB Acquisition. We're going to be going over a deal, but before that, give me just a moment so I can share the link with the other members. And see if you don't mind dropping this link on the chat because I cannot access it right now. Do you got it?
I got it.
Okay. So I'm gonna make a announcement. There was an incident today on the group chat, and let me explain something to the individuals listening. We are open to criticism. We accept criticism. The mission statement, and let me reiterate that our mission is to disprove the misinformation and disinformation in the industry. With that said, there are rules of engagement. Let me explain what they are. Very simple, 3 steps. If you're going to criticize any information in the group, myself or ANSI included, there's 3 things you got to stick by. The reason it's because misinformation could lead to somebody losing their business. Misinformation could lead to somebody overpaying on that acquisition and going bankrupt. Misinformation could lead to a lot of things. So we have to be very strict with it. There's a method to it. Just like with science, if you want to disprove a theory, you need to have your own evidence to back it up. The first thing is you need to specify and outline the misinformation we're portraying. It could either be, a way of me valuing business, or it could be a way with ANSI raising capital. Whatever it be, you have to specify in detail what that is. After you specify that, you got to detail why. What is the reason you consider this misinformation or disinformation or just incorrect or subpar, whatever you want to call it. But there's a third step that is the most important, which is you have to provide an alternative. One of the ways we made our name in the industry is we came in and disproved people by telling them, first, we outlined what the information was, for example, EBITDA. Then we explained why its usage leads to overvaluations. And then we provided an alternative, free cash for the firm. With that said, that is the approach we're going to take. If any individual is not following those 3 steps, they will be removed from the group. I mean, we'll give you a chance to speak, but ultimately, if you cannot provide a reasoning why, and you cannot provide an alternative, you're not providing any value to a group. There's a learning and educational platform that is very high level and professional. So ensure the way you're speaking follows that. With that said, we can get started and see what this one deal you have. And it's a $10.5 million deal. We're going to teach you how we're structuring it. ANSI has a very innovative approach. No banks involved. It's all going to be the seller and investors. And then we're going to talk about the 33 rule with private equity. And we'll be going over something special we have for you guys. Let's get started, ANSI.
Yeah. So real quick, a correction to that. It's actually a bit smaller deal. It's a $6 million deal. It's not the $10.5 million deal that I referenced earlier. We're gonna review that deal in another live episode, but for now, let's review this one. And hey, let me just touch on what you said, Valence. We're open to criticism, of course. Absolutely. We don't want the group to be a echo chamber by any means. That's not what we're doing here. We actually want people who are either starting out, you're midway in your journey in M&A, or you're a little bit further along to actually criticize us and give input. If there's something that we're not doing properly, that being said, it can be a bit subjective, but if there's another way that you feel we could be going about a specific situation or a topic, feel free to share that and we're open to it. So we don't want to be a echo chamber community by any means. And I don't want to drag that topic out, but I just wanted to add that. With that being said, I want to share my screen with you and give you a preview of the LOI and the way that I structured it and some of the language that we use. All right, just 1 second. Let me share my screen with you guys.
ANSI, do me a favor. Is the live Are people able to see it and hear it clearly? We just want to
Yeah,
ensure before we get into the details, people can see it.
yeah, it's coming smoothly. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
I'm checking on my end. Okay, so let me pull up this LOI 1 second. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background or share with you some details about the deal, um, what kind of business it is, some of the operations, management, some of the key employees, stuff like that. So you have a better picture of the deal overall. So it makes a little bit more sense when you're looking at this document here. This is two businesses in one. This is home health. Down here in South Florida, home health is actually growing. COVID-19, a lot of people and a lot of companies, specifically in healthcare, they experienced a boom. Medical staffing is one of them, and that's the $10.5 million deal that I have. But home health, ever since COVID-19, people are actually looking for better access to health at home, particularly the elderly population. So home health is something that's growing here in South Florida, and it's something that is attractive to investors nationwide, in fact. So this is a skilled and a non-skilled. Skilled is basically you need a nurse. Non-skilled, you don't necessarily need a nurse. You can have a basic person with basic training. It's non-medical. Skilled, it's medical, and you get reimbursed from Medicare, but it's a lot larger. For comparison, non-skilled, I believe the reimbursement on non-skilled is about 150 or so, or about $200 is what you get for the non-skilled, and the skilled version of it is 2,000 per patient per month is what you get reimbursed from Medicare. So it's easier to grow a skilled version than a non-skilled. But for this here, I'm not sharing any financials. We're way beyond that. But for this particular deal here, the skilled version of the business actually has a lower revenue, annual revenue, but it's a higher profit margin, as opposed to the non-skilled, which has a larger revenue but lower profit margin. Right. For comparison, the non-skilled side, I believe the revenue per year is about 1.8 million per year, and the EBITDA on that is 1.1 million. The skilled side is 5 million a year, and the yes, it's 5 million a year, and the non I'm sorry, the EBITDA on that is, I believe, 800,000, something to that effect. So lower profit margins, but larger or more revenue on the non-skill side. In the skill side, you have larger profit margins, but less revenue. But it's a lot easier to grow that. And that's just a little bit of background. The operations, we have one person. Her name's Robin. She's the administrative. She oversees everything. She's the one who makes sure the office is running smoothly. She's been running the business for about 12, 13 years. The owner of the business is someone who is from out of state, and it's an absentee owner. So Robin is the main person that makes sure the operations are running. They have about 6 staff full time, right? And they do not see patients. This is not an outpatient type of thing. It's only an admin business. Now, let's just take a look at this LOI. We've been negotiating it. Let's look at the price of the acquisition. So collectively, we're looking at, I believe, a 1.663 million EBITDA for these two entities collectively. And I believe we're offering a 3.5 multiple on this deal here, if I'm not mistaken. So the purchase price, the entire purchase price, I'm sorry, it's not 3 million. Yeah, so this right here is just a consideration, but the thing is, I think this is a version that I previously edited. But the price for it is really 5.8 is what we're paying for it. We're paying 5.8, and the 3.7, I'm sorry, 3.5 is actually the cash consideration is what they get at closing, right? That's what they get at closing. And we want a 500,000 earnout, which is really small in consideration of the amount, right? 500,000 is just to make sure that if the performance of the business dips for any reason, it doesn't really perform 100% of what the seller says it should, we take a little bit back, right? So this 500,000 here is only it's to incentivize the seller, but it's to make sure that we have some kind of a safety net. So cash at closing, again, here, this is an edited version. It should be 5.8 million. I'm sorry, yes, this is right. Cash at closing is 3.5 million, but the total cash consideration is actually 5.8 million. A promissory note, which is 30% of this deal, is 1.74 million. This is very basic terms here as far as the seller note. 4%, you know, typically you see 4.55% interest rate on these notes. So 4% is kind of like on the lower end. I was able to negotiate that. The seller accepted it. No big deal here. And then the earnout, like I mentioned, it's only 500,000. Usually I would do more of a $2 million earnout type of thing. But for this here, it's not that big considering what we're giving them at closing, which is only 3.5 million, and we have a nice size seller finance. So we're okay with a lower earnout amount. Now, so the earnout is always going to be on some kind of defined EBITDA target, and depending on how you define it, is how you're going to structure it over here. So this is basically this 100% here in the 80%. What I'm saying is, comes 2023, December 2023, if the company performs 80% of what it should, he's going to get 80% of this 250K. If it does 100% of it, then he gets 100%. Now, conversely, if the following year, after it underperformed, let's say 80%, and the next year it performs at 120%, the seller actually has the option to catch up and that acts as 20%. So this is a really good deal for sellers. They tend to take it because if one year, which a lot of them are confident that the business is going to operate how they sell it, but it's to give them a chance to be able to catch up in the event that the year they said, or one year they didn't perform the way that the business should perform. So this is what this language here is. That's all that it's saying. And I don't want to make this. I don't really want to make this like a full LOI review or anything like that. I've done tons of those videos, but here is the working capital. 140K is standard for working capital. This is something that we actually discuss when we get to the purchase and sell agreement. This here is not something that, even though we execute the LOI, it's not a deal breaker. A lot of times we get sellers don't want to give us working capital, but that's something we usually negotiate in it. Now, real quick, Valentino, your experience with working capital with sellers, what has that been? You had a deal that you negotiated a little while back. I think Samantha, someone like that. It was an
Yeah.
online. It was a weird mix, right? Like an online business type of thing, but it's healthcare. Tell us a little bit about that and the working capital situation, if any, because I find a lot of different working capital situations, and sellers, like, historically, do not like giving up working capital.
Yeah, in this case, the seller really did not want to give up working capital. We had to really push and negotiate. The only thing she was really willing to do was about 3 months of expenses for the business to be covered at closing, which I mean it's fine, but I negotiate more than that. The thing about this deal specifically was, and I don't like e-commerce at all, but for the e-com, it was mostly e-com, but they own the product. It was their own website. They had contracts with other pharmacies and medical institutions. So it's really the only type of business I push for e-com. But you always want to ensure you have that working capital when you're buying the business outright. You don't want to tap into your cash flow immediately. You want to have the seller try to provide some cushion for you.
Yeah, but look, this is the thing though. Like, yeah, although you want the seller to provide that, that's never a real deal breaker. In fact, the last deal, I don't know if you remember, Valentino, the hyperbaric deal. They didn't want to. They first agreed to like 150K working capital, which would
Right.
cover the business for about, I think, like 2.5, 3 months or something like. No, 3 months. Yeah, it would cover the business
Mm.
for 3 months of operations. They said yes, and then afterwards they kind of claw back and say no, 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 we're not comfortable with the working capital. They look at it as taking like money out of their account, right,
Yeah,
out of the
yeah,
business account, so
yeah.
they don't like doing that. And sometimes you can negotiate to keep a portion of the cash. You're not really entitled to it. It
Right.
depends on the situation. But they came back and said no, we don't want to give working capital, and that was not a deal breaker.
But let's talk about
So
alternatives because there are two
mhm,
alternatives. If you can't get
right.
working capital from the seller, you can get working capital from the investor, and you
Yep.
can also get a line of credit from the bank.
I
That
mean, that's almost a requisite.
right,
Getting a line of credit from the bank. I mean,
immediately,
obvious. Like
immediately get
there's
that.
a couple of things that's like a requisite, right? Over financing by 10%. I would say
Yeah,
that's the rule of thumb, even though we don't really like you a rule of thumbs, right?
right.
But over finance by 10%, that's just the automatic. Nobody on your team is gonna, give you pushback on that. That's an
And talk about the
industry standard.
revolving credit because that's your favorite. You won that
Yeah, of
revolving
course.
credit.
Yeah, that goes into like the working capital, right? So your working capital, you're going to get a line of credit from the bank, and it depends on how much the deal or the business need. The last request for working capital I sent to the bank, I believe last year was like 650K. No, no, it was 650. It was 650K was
Mm.
the last amount. But you want that on a revolver, because if you run out, or even if you don't use it, but whatever portion you use the next month, it just gets replenished.
Yeah.
So you're having access to that every month throughout the year, which is going to come in handy because we had a experience with a couple incidents with the chamber that we didn't see coming. We had a leak. We had an oxygen leak. It took
Mm.
us about 4 hours to figure out what was going on, and we had to wait for the guy that was scheduled to come in for maintenance 3 months. He had to come in 3 months ahead of schedule, so that threw a wrench in the operations. Things we did not foresee coming. Bird flew into the window, broke it. Weird things like that. But that working capital you always want to have on hand. And if the seller does not give you working capital, it shouldn't be a deal breaker because you
Right.
have other sources of working capital
Correct.
available to you. So yeah, that's that section, working capital. Financial statements. Again, this is not a full review of the LOI. Closing date for this deal was set for August 2nd. The medical staffing deal we have is, what is the date for that? Is it September? Do you remember September or October? I think it's October. I don't know, honestly. I think it's October. Talked about it yesterday.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
yeah, this was set for August this year. What else do I really want to touch on? All these right here, standard language in any LOI, which you guys should have in your LOI. On if you want to, and if you want a copy of this, guys, reach out to me. There are no brokers involved in this deal, but there is a finder's fee that I am giving to someone, a close friend of mine who brought this deal to me. It is an off market deal, but there are finders involved, and you have to outline that in your LOI.
Yo, very
Ex-
quickly, Ansi. Now that
mhm.
we're on the topic of the LOI, let's go over a few provisions that are necessary that you should
Yeah.
have when sending out those LOIs. I think one of them is going to be that no shop provision. Even if it's an
Yes.
off-market deal,
Mm,
you don't want the seller to be shopping around because you may make him an offer, and what he's going to do is use that as a point of reference and try to see if he could get a better one. Another one that is very important, and I learned this with an attorney, is when there is some equity hold involved, you have to put a clause that the seller cannot sell that equity or do anything without your permission because they might try to get that 30-40% equity hold and try to cash it out with somebody else. So you got to be careful with those things. What are a few other provisions you might think that are
No,
necessary?
but just to touch on that real quick. So the hyperbaric deal, we came across something similar to that. As you know, the seller had a significant note, 60%, right? So they had some concerns about that. They were saying, hey, in any event, can we, I think to the effect of like transferring shares to their son or something like that. They thought that in our PSA we were hindering them from doing so. So we actually had to stop the deal, and our attorneys had to converge and discuss exactly what it means. It was more like a language type of thing, right? My attorney used a certain language, their attorney used a certain language, and it was just a little bit of confusion that we had to clear it up. But the seller thought my attorney was saying, "Hey, you can't sell or you can't pass on any shares to your kid or anything like that," and they had a issue with that. So you guys really, really want to pay attention to when it comes down to what Valentino just pointed out, which it could be a deal stopper sometimes. Some other provisions in here. I mean, again, all of these things are just basic. You should have, right? Certain action by seller is really what you want to pay attention to, which is number six, paragraph six here. Uh, all of these here, no sale of assets, obviously, purchase or redemption of membership interest, right? Dividends. Um, I mean, limited amendment of charter documents. I mean, these material transaction inconsistent with past practices. This here you really want to have because you want to uphold the quality of the practice after you acquire it. But again, all of these are basic provisions you want to have in your LOI. This is what Valentino was referring to: solicitation of other offers. Obviously, you want to put a stop to that, which this your LOI will grant you an exclusivity period. And if you do not have that, then you need to find a better attorney. Certain conditions here, which are outlined. Uh, Broker's fee, finder's fee. I mentioned there's a close friend of mine who brought this deal to me. Expenses is just saying that, hey, I'm responsible for my own expenses, whatever it is. Seller, they're responsible for their own expenses, whatever those are, and I will not be liable, nor they will be liable for my expenses. I mean, there's a couple ways if you feel strongly you're going to close on the deal, nothing is going to stop you. You have the finance lined up, procured. You can actually have a breakup clause in that, saying that if for any reason other than fraud, you will not back away. And on the seller's part, it will say the same thing. And if they back away, there's a certain fee you can put into that to say that the seller owes you. I mean, I've seen some extreme versions like like the party owing the seller or the buyer the price of the acquisition. Kind of extreme, but that's what this is saying here. Not a contract except for certain provisions, paragraph 5, 7, and 11. They will be binding. Jurisdiction. Again, this is not an LOI review. I just wanted to share a little bit above of how we have it structured. And here we have, my information, the seller's information, and who's going to be executing it. Who in your company, either you or another executive, is going to be executing this document here. Okay, so yeah, that was a little bit about how we structure our LOI. You will have to negotiate depending on how you're offering or what you're offering, but we like to get straight to the point. We send this out after we've had conversations with the seller, numerous conversations. My team and I, we've engaged and we've came up with marketing strategies and all these things. That way, we're comfortable with moving forward with it beyond this point. So we do not engage with the seller and then immediately afterwards send a LOI. We find out a lot more information, do a little bit more due diligence than your average person would do, and we move forward. That's when we get to this stage here. So that was just it for this LOI version. I have something else I want to share with you, but let me know if you have any points, any remarks on this.
I mean,
Valentino.
let me add to it. The approach you take is more efficient because you want to ensure you have the proper information. LOI is you're not gonna send three, four, five different iterations of it. You're gonna send one, and you want to ensure you can maximize on it. You have all the proper data, and you don't want to make a lot of changes because then that also affects the look the seller has on you, the perception. Is this guy a professional? Does he know what he's doing, or does he have to change everything every 5 minutes? I mean, you're going to send your initial LOI as detailed as you can, and then you're going to negotiate terms with the seller in regards with the LOI and the attorneys involved. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Real quick. So what you're trying to say is basically, and my attorney taught me this, a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. When you're sending out your offer, LOI, however you want to call it, you want to make sure you put everything that's favorable to you in it, because the first time you submit it, that's going to be the best deal that you get, right? Because once the seller sends it back, they're gonna have some, disagreements. They want to change things up, maybe change the length of something, the amount of something, the percentage interest, whatever the case is. Maybe their attorney have certain things they want to change in it, the language. That's the best they're going to get when you submit it. So you want to make sure that you put everything that's going to be favorable to you that you want in it right then and there, because after that you can't put that back in there, right? So
Absolutely.
you want to make sure you start out with everything that you want, you
Hmm.
know, bells and whistles, send it over because it's downhill from there. The seller, it's the same thing on the seller's end as well. Like the deal they send you, the counter they send you is the best that they're going to get, because what you send them is not going to be what they sent you, right? So it's both ways. What you send is going to be the best, what they send you is going to be their best,
Let-
and it's just downhill from there until you guys meet in the middle.
Let's touch on this a little more. The misconception of a motivated seller, I changed that word to a desperate seller. Those are the ones you're gonna see on the brokerage. Those are the ones that 1 out of 10 sell. It's a fallacy to think that somebody's gonna give away their life's work to an individual at their price and terms. This is where negotiation comes into play. You have what you want, he has what he wants. And ultimately, you have to meet in the middle. So get rid of that ideology of a motivated seller and thinking that because the seller is rebutting whatever you're giving him means he's not motivated. No, you have to create that motivation. Just the fact that you're negotiating or speaking about the sale of the business means that the seller has an interest. But just like with sales, they have the option to either, buy from you, buy from somebody else, or not buy at all. So it's up to you to decide if they're going to buy from you, right? And that's
Yeah,
where the report comes in.
yeah, I'll add to that too. So like, not only that, not only are they desperate, but some of them are very uneducated, right? I mean, there's been a couple instances where a seller comes to me and they're like, "Hey, you know, your process is very much different." And I ask, "What experience have you had with trying to sell your business?" And they, 9 times out of 10, it's been with a broker. The broker either was not listening to them, and they were more so being unrealistic about what they can get for it on the market, which obviously that's a negotiating tactic, right? But you still want to be grounded to reality. You don't want to be having these outlandish offers that no one's going to accept, which is going to prolong the time of the business being on the market, which doesn't work for the seller.
With that said, one thing I do want to clarify for individuals is that, such as business brokers, who we would consider middlemen and others that fall in that category, they do not work for you. They work for themselves. So it is illogical for you to think the broker is in your best interest. I'd even argue the same would go for thinking that the broker's in the best interest for the seller. You gotta understand, when it comes to commission based type of jobs, the only way to maximize how much you take home is by increasing that commission. And because that commission is a percentage, you gotta ultimately increase the price of the sale of that business. Also, why do business brokers like to recommend SBA? Well, guess what? SBA has a referral system. They get a fee if they could get you to get that deal through one of their SBA lenders. So these are things you got to take into consideration. Assuming you will get the best deal on a business that is through a brokerage firm is laughable, honestly. It ultimately comes down to off market, and this is why we're building a platform called Lead Gen Assets, and Nancy is going to pioneer that. But at the end of the day, we want those off market deals. As let's talk about what you got right here on the screen.
Okay, so what I pulled up is this is something I've been wanting to talk about for a while now, and I've just been putting it off. In fact, I've gotten tons of members ask about it. Had a couple members check it out, to see what the content within is, and gotten some great feedback. And I just wanted to share that with you guys today, just to get it out the way, really. But this is something that we've put together. We've been working on for quite some time. It's a course that we have to help you close your first deal, and it is extremely extensive, by the way. So I want to just share that with you guys real quick. More so, some of the topic and what you could expect to find in a curriculum like this. So real quick, we've been doing a lot of videos, more videos than lately, and we've been dropping a lot of posts. in the group. Part of that is to get the engagement back up. Like we said, we have some time on our hands, and we want to put out a lot more content for you guys. So we've been dropping posts and we've been going live a lot. Obviously, the podcast has resumed. The posts that we've been dropping, they're actually based on the course. So some of the titles or all of the titles of the post that you've seen is actually directly from this course here. So I just wanted to take a little bit of time and uh, go over this again and share with you guys what we have available, because we don't really, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Valentino, but we don't really talk about some of the services that we have, just because, like I said, this is not something that we sought out to do. It's
Yep.
by accident,
We
right? So,
rarely like to advertise, but ultimately, we just compiled all the data for you guys, so you just have a one-stop shop. Seems like a lot of people get lost in the details. We do put out a lot of content. Um, this is your one-stop shop. Essentially, this is a university for the real deal maker. And again, it comes from experience, not from us. But as you see, the people in the podcast, they're professionals. They can back that data up.
yeah, sure. So, real quick, just to quickly go through this. Uh, Again, is very straightforward. This is the beginning section here. What you can expect from the course, who am I? A little bit about my background and the deal that I just previously did, the recording of it. You don't, going over the topics, you don't need any experience to buy a seven-figure business. This is basically addressing a lot of the misconceptions that are in acquisitions. Again, correct me if I'm wrong and tell me your opinion on here, Valentino. But this is really what this course is. Like, it's not anything new. You can find all of this information out there. Granted, it'll take you some time, right? But what I've done is just basically taken my 2 years experience and the deals that I've had the pleasure of going through and the one that we actually did. I just took that experience and put it here. So all of the questions that you guys have, I mainly just answer it in this course. So that's what you're gonna see. Again, feel free to jump in here, Valentino, anytime. But
Yeah, I got
that's
I
the
got
reason
one thing I
why.
want people to take into consideration, which ultimately it comes down to price. What's the price, right? I'll tell you this: it's a fraction of whatever course you see out there in the market. The reason is we want to promote education to all, not just for the few. Give you that corporate advantage and edge.
Of course. So again, just let's get going. You don't need any experience to buy a seven-figure business in 2023. In fact, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, this was true. Maybe 5 years ago, still true, right? How to maximize the use of this? Again, not really relevant here, but this is not for the faint of heart. It's all or nothing. Again, Valentino could attest to this. It took a while for us to get to where we are now, and it's been more than we could count on two hands. We wanted to give up and just say, you know what, screw this, let's do something else. But yeah, we persisted, we kept going, and we're here. Obviously, winners winners win, right? Losers lose. But in between those two, you know, I wouldn't even say it's not a fine line by any means. It's a broad line, right? Because not everybody has what it takes.
Hey, let me add to this though. Even with the deal done, we're not owner operators, and we're not with the SBA.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is I would say that's the number one differentiator between us, Valentino, and everybody else that actually does this. Uh, Other people preach how to buy a job, and I'm like, no, this is generational wealth that we want to create. And this is another vehicle that we found is a lot easier, in my opinion, a lot easier. I love working with people, so this is a lot easier for me. I love doing deals, negotiating, and all these things. So this is easier for me. It's a vehicle that is a lot easier than real estate. In my opinion, you can make a lot more money now in buying businesses and creating a platform than you can in real estate. Real estate is more of a long game, right? So, yeah, you could take money that you earn from here and put it into real estate. That's not a problem. But pound for pound, in my experience, and I have an extensive background in commercial real estate, by the way, it's easier to do or become wealthy in buying businesses than it is in real estate.
Let me add to this. Another huge differentiator between M&A and real estate is because we're acquiring mature companies already established and cash flowing all out the gate, as opposed to getting investors, creating a building, trying to lease it out, or you're buying a building and lease. Not only that, immediately as soon as you acquire the business, you're taking on a salary. You're getting a percentage investment banking fee. You know, if you got a fund, we're managing money, we get a fee for managing that money. So there's excess amount of cash. It's really not a problem. And as you're growing your fund, your fee also grows. As you acquire more businesses, you also get more in your pocket. So those are things you have to take into consideration.
Yeah, real quick too, as far as like the fee, management fee and stuff like that, like don't think of it as 2% as being the standard. That's actually not true, by the way. There are things that you can do. We're not going to talk about it, but there are things you can do to get that bumped up to, 3%, 4%, 5%
Mm-hmm.
type of thing, right? But it's a good thing. Again, it's a lot easier, a lot faster, again, in my opinion, than just trying to buy real estate and waiting to cash out on it. Okay, so you have to, I said all this to say that you have to be persistent. You can't be, again, it's not for scary people, it's not for people who, they need the stars to align to pull this off. This is not what this is. This is high risk, but it's the highest risk, in fact. Because of that, is higher reward, right? Is it easier to buy a seven-figure business than it is to build one? It absolutely is. No questions asked about that. Power of perception, right? And here I talk about my experience between showing up in a suit and tie and the whole thing, and just coming a little bit more casual, something similar to this, but maybe a button down, right? Dealing with smaller sellers and bigger sellers, right? Smaller sellers tend to think that, hey, he's from a big firm or bank. They're going to buy my business for pennies on the dollar. So you may want to see or just get a feel for the seller and who they are. And when it comes to trying to get financials from the seller after engagement, presenting your team, having your team on the calls with you, having that perception, right? Building that perception around the seller that you are a corporation, you're doing everything, you're succeeding by on purpose and not by accident. That's some of the things I talk about in this video here. Again, buying multiple businesses at once, no brainer there. The first one is the hardest. After that, everything falls into place, which is absolutely what we've experienced. After that, it's like you're on the other side and things are a little bit more easier. I like to say life is on a little bit easier mode after the first one. Here is a crash course that talks about mergers and acquisitions. 38 minutes. It's actually a video from Valentino, in fact. So this section here, crafting your investment thesis to present to bankers and sellers, which is who is going to need this. Building perception, industry research, all of these things, crafting your investment thesis, information from industry research, where to go to research, to get research about any specific industry. We talk about that here. The best candidate, the best industries to create an acquisition platform. These, I think, Valentino, we've already dropped posts for these, correct? These titles here I'm reading.
Yeah, these are the titles we're currently dropping polls. We've dropped about the majority for section one.
Right, right. Some industries are more complex than others. I've absolutely experienced this. I started out in medical devices and I needed 50 million to buy a reputable, well managed medical manufacturing company. And that's when I kind of step away and it started to change my investment thesis. So some industries have a way higher barrier to entry than others, right? I mean, medical devices, you need 2 million just to get a FDA approved, a 510K approved, and it takes 2 years. You're not going to run into any of that if you're looking at, service-based businesses, kind of like washing, coin laundries, tire shops, auto shops, places like that. You're not going to run into these things. Cleaner, dry cleaner, mom and pop dry cleaner. You're not going to run into these things. They're very low barrier to entry kind of things. But if you get into healthcare, which is a lot more heavily regulated and all these things, then it's going to be a little bit more complex and you're going to need a little bit more time and maybe a little bit more capital to start out as opposed to someone else who want to buy, a mechanic shop or something like that. What are your thoughts on that, Valentino?
No, absolutely. One thing I want to touch on is that people have to get rid of this mentality that you don't need to know nothing. You don't need to know anything. Rely on your team purely. Because at the end of the day, investors are investing in you as an individual. And if you show lack of skill, as a leader, as a businessman, as somebody who can take this to the next level, they're more than likely not to go with you. Even though the deal could stand on its own 2 feet, but ultimately, it okay. There's a thing about deal standing on its own 2 feet. It did with the previous owner. Can it with you as the new owner? That's a real question, right? So this course is ultimately, it goes above and beyond from M&A. It's corporate finance, it's investment banking, it's private equity. You want to be a fund manager, right? This is what it is about. Because a lot of people think it's about buying a business and there it is. No, you're managing money, you're managing employees, you're managing investments. You got to ultimately grow this IPO and exit, which is not really talked about. Yeah, the idea is, but what is the process?
Yeah, and that's a process in its on its own, right there, the IPO process, right? But I think a lot of people think this is, these things are a cakewalk, growing a company, scaling it, and things like that. Oh, I'm going to do it in 2 years. I'm going to do it in 3 years, 4 years. Like, it's textbook. It looks great on paper, but when it comes time to execute it in reality, does it work the same? So great points there. Let's move on. Interview industry experts and operators to gain insights about your industry. This is something I did when I started out. That's why I knew so much about medical devices. People thought like I was an expert. All I did was on LinkedIn, I reach out to people who had extensive experience, in that. I asked them a ton of questions. Reach out to people. You just need to speak to about 3, 4 people, and then you're going to start. They're going to lay out the path for you to go with respect to research about that industry. Things that you probably couldn't find readily available online, type of thing, or maybe some kind of case studies they could point you to. Right. So interview your industry experts before. Or to gain great insights about your industry. Low versus high multiple industries. Again, this kind of correlates to simple versus complex. When it makes sense to buy at a premium. For example, the LOI I just showed to you guys. I actually backed away from that deal. We presented the LOI at 3.5 multiple. Seller said they wanted to go. They were looking for a little bit more premium. I went up an entire point, 4.5, and they were looking for a 5.5 multiple. Ultimately, they came back to me and said, "Hey, look, the only way we would accept that 4.5 multiple is if they would accept 4.5, 50% up front, 50% paid later. But that later payment would be a 12-month payment." I was like, absolutely not. There's no way. There's absolutely no way I'm going to, pay, I don't know what it was, like almost 8 million, right? So they wanted us to pay 4 million in 12 months. That was not going to happen at all. And I understand that home health is a bit of a premium down here in South Florida. In fact, seeing a 4.5 to 5 multiple is not out of the realm of ordinary. You see that quite often, but it has to be a turnkey operation, which this was not by any means of any stretch of the imagination. So you want to, be careful and know when it makes sense to pay a premium and when it's not. Um, does it make sense to buy at a premium for your first, second deal? I don't know. I don't think it's worth it. What do you think about that, Valentino?
I'm very risk averse. Buy for as low as you can, because you want to ensure these first deals that you are buying have enough cash flows to substantiate the next ones. Not only that, that gives you working capital money, that gives you research and development money, that gives you marketing money, that gives you power. So you want to ensure you have as much as that as possible. I mean, you buy a business and just dry out the cash flows. What are you really going to do? You're going to get in more debt that you won't be able to support, and this is going to become an issue. So set yourself up for success by ensuring you have adequate cash flows going out the gate.
Great. Next one, be decisive. M&A is all or nothing. There's no such thing as halfway in. Again, this kind of correlates to where is it? Is it this section up here?
Yep, it
This is
isn't
not
for
for
the
the faint
faint
of
of heart.
heart.
Hmm.
It kind of correlate, right? So you have to be decisive. You can't be indecisive at all. Sellers, they're not going to like that. Your team, they're not going to follow you. That is not a trait of a good leader, right? So you have to be decisive. My thing is, I'm going to make a decision. It doesn't matter. I'm going to make a decision. I move fast though, and I'm like, hey, if I make the wrong decision, cool. But the speed I'm moving, I could actually rectify it quicker, than someone who can't make a decision at all, and they need all these stats, all these things to line up before they make a decision. So you have to be decisive. when you're dealing with an M&A because you're leading a team, and again, your team, they can smell fear and weakness. Crafting a strong thesis. This is just a download, I believe, right here. Let's move on to the second section: how to recruit top tier M&A team. This is just recruiting your team here, right? Time wasted is money lost. I say that all the time. A lot of people give out equity, and they actually don't have to, especially if you're giving equity that vests immediately. That is not a good idea at all, because the team you start out with most likely will not be the team that you end with. The team that you do your first $5 million deal with is not the team you're going to do $100 million deal with. So be careful of how you give out that equity, and be careful not to waste time with people who are just basically placeholders and aren't really contributing anything. What do you have to say about that?
I mean, one of the biggest issues a lot of people face is that they assume they have a team, but that team is not active. I mean, when you need your CFO, when you need your attorney tomorrow, can you get them on the call in 24 hours or less? If that's not the case, you really have a team. We teach you how to build a team that's actually engaged and it's focused on the success of your business. Because a lot of these individuals also have their own time and their own lives. So, how do you ensure what you're doing is worthwhile for them?
Okay, great. What is a deal team and why you need one? Self-explanatory right here. How to build a solid team. As you can see, there's 108 minutes on here. How to pick the best candidate for your team, and what to look for in a great industry expert. Great industry expert, in my opinion, should be someone who's been an operator in that industry before, who's operated businesses and has had successful exits, multiple exits. Is preferred. That's what in my opinion, is a great industry expert. Pros and cons with advisory board versus your board of directors. Obviously, your advisory board have no real power to change the direction of the company, where your board of directors, they do. But often people make the mistake of having their board of directors, their actual board of directors, they confuse that with their deal team, and they give them equity and give them power that they really shouldn't have. Right? Your board of directors, in my opinion, shouldn't be anybody who's not contributing or bringing actual capital to the deal or the company. So those are the only people I feel should be on the board of directors, which should be you, a partner that you have, and an investor who's actually contributing capital to the deal or the company. Equity distribution. How much equity to give out without losing your company? Again, this ties into the time wasted is money lost. Don't give out too much equity, especially something that's vesting immediately 100% of it. That's a no-no. How to speed up recruitment process using LinkedIn, self-explanatory. Again, all these things here, LinkedIn Recruiter, right? Fast versus slow. Now, let me just talk about this a little bit. Fast versus slow. In this one, what I talk about is the difference that I've seen when I use a specific technique that we teach to have people reach out to us, and then I reach out to people physically. Now, it's faster if I have people reach out to me. I can create a team in 14 days or less, 10 days. I can have a full functioning team, high level. But there's a higher risk of that team leaving, those members leaving, and there's a higher chance or risk of those members asking you for compensation right then. Now, when it's people that I reach out to, it's slower, right? It may take me a month to create a team when I'm reaching out to them. But when I reach out to them, these are more so people who are a lot more established, a lot more successful, and they're not going to be asking you for compensation anytime soon. A lot of them would be like, "Hey, this is an equity play. That's fine. I prefer equity." All these things. So that's the difference that I see, and that's what I talk about: the fast versus slow kind of thing. Closing your deal team in the next step. All of these things, again, pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. A lot of people lose momentum right after creating the team, uh, and that comes and when they have to look for deal flow. A lot of them don't know where to deal flow or to get deal flow. Some people resort to on-market deals with brokers, and ultimately loses the team. So I talk about how to not lose your momentum, because once you gain that, you lose it. It's very hard to get that back up. Right here, do you need a CEO before your first deal, and how much equity should be you give to them? CEO, in my opinion, you should start them with 5% with a very small portion of that vesting, and you should give them an option, or the ceiling should be 10%. But between that 5 and 10%, it should absolutely be some kind of um, um, milestones, if you will, to add to that before they can actually get that equity distributed to them. The rest of this is basically talking about LinkedIn and how to use the recruiter executive summary. Again, all of these things is really, really great points and great questions that people have asked. When to file your LLC, the best state to file in, vesting schedule, when to distribute equity, and all these things, right? And this third section here, this is for your accounting. I'm sorry, this is for your legal, right? How to get legal representation, third party, and how to get the best legal team to work with you. And they tell you no, I'm sorry, they tell you yes on deferred fees. There's a little trick or something that you can tell these guys, and it's gonna 100% get them to work with you on deferred fees. And I share that in these videos here. The fourth section is the accounting firm. We all know why we need accounting firm is the quality of earnings, right? And we want to make sure that we have a third party to verify the numbers for our investors or for our bank presentations. It builds a lot more trust because if it's done internally, there could be a lot of bias there. Now, fifth section, deal flow, which is arguably the most important section here. If you look, we talk about the most vital aspects of deal flow, secrets of cold calling, how to find off market and locate seller list, all these things, how to maximize and avoid pitfalls when looking for deals. Again, this is arguably the most important section in this. What do you think, Valentino? What would you say to that?
I mean, if you don't have deal flow, what are you really doing? You're just sitting, just sitting. You gotta get that deal flow. The quicker you can start getting in those leads, you can start negotiating with them. At the end of the day, it's a numbers game. You know, from 10 business owners that you speak with, how many are you receiving financials? How many are you getting an LOI? How many can you close on? So you want to maximize that. So if it's a 1 to 10 ratio, hey, try to 10x that.
Absolutely. Again, motivated sellers versus tire kickers, knowing the difference and staying focused, right? High probability prospects. You don't want to get tired from, wasting your time with people who's not really interested in selling. Doing deals in your backyard, which is something I did. My first deal is right here in Florida. The reason why is because I could just drive to it as opposed to flying, which is a lot more costly, right? And some people aren't in that position to just take, 10, 12, 15 flights back and forth to meet with sellers. So doing deals in your backyard would make a lot more sense and it's a lot more cost effective. Developing relationships, all these things, pretty straightforward. This is something that's important here when you're doing when you're creating a deal team. Um, more of a sales team, I would say. And these are the people who's going to keep the deal flow consistently coming in, which is very, very important. How to 10x your deal pipeline, right? Becoming a qualified buyer. This is important as well because you want to give the sellers the perception that you know what you're doing and you're able to perform. You do not want to ruin your credibility in this industry by not being able to perform and getting, basically biting more than you could chew. Again, getting what you want from sellers, getting respect, getting 30% or more in seller finance. This is very, very important here. And one of the strategies one of the approaches that we take is to bring up taxes, capital gain taxes. Valentino knows this and it works well. So capital gains tax, a lot of people or a lot of sellers don't even think about that, but that is extremely important. If you bring that up bringing that up is one of the ways that, we're able to strike a 30% or more seller finance in our deals. Important things about getting through owners, cold calling, managing perception. All of these things again are things that you really need to know. The most important aspect about this is the deal flow, and we break it down entirely here, along with scripts and some other things that we share as well. Analysis and evaluation. Again, Valentino's specialty here. We break that down. We walk you through. I mean, not only the beginning due diligence level, but the entire process, what you need to be looking for, how to, spot a bad person in the deal, evaluating company financials, right? Looking at the tax returns, free cash flow to firm, which is a metric that we use for these smaller businesses that we like to pay attention to. Commercial real estate, or do you want to close, or do you want to buy the real estate with your first deal, second deal, right? Does it make sense? All of these things,
One
right?
thing I do want to point out, if you could scroll up a little,
Sure.
is the in-depthness of this content. As you can see, first video 85 minutes 57 seconds worth of content, second one is 105. So we really go in depth here Not only that, there's text articles, there's documents, there's other files you need, but essentially it all encompasses what you need to know and not miss anything out.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. Thanks for that. This is something I've experienced. I had the experience personally. You can't make a good deal with a bad person,
Hmm.
right? So I experienced that personally. Style of finance versus equity hold versus dynamic earnout, um, which is something that we're going to talk about as some later live videos. But we cover this as well. Again, just really, really great points, and we cover all of the topics that you would, or all the questions that you would have. And then here, section negotiations, and this is a lot more in depth, right? But we're going to stop it here. Banker scripts and everything else. This has 11 sections, guys. So there's four more sections that we're not even showing here. But this is just a preview of what's in the course. Like Valentino said, I don't think you're going to find a more in-depth course anywhere else online about this. This is from our personal experience, things that we've lived. So, is the information out there? You can find it. Is it readily available? It is. Can you easily access it? You can, but you have to do some research, a lot of digging. But what we did was we put it in one central location to be able to, so you can have access to it. And all of these things, they're worth a lot more than I'm putting up here. But we just wanted to share with you guys, what we have, because we don't talk about these things enough, and we have a lot of people ask what kind of services we offer. So I just wanted to touch on that. And that said, let's stop this sharing session here and get back to the live.
Yeah, absolutely. As you guys were able to see, that is just one of many items we will be sharing with you guys in the future. But ultimately, it comes down to we want to ensure that the first deal you do is you do it right. I mean, when I started, I gave away what like half
Too
of my
much.
equity.
Yeah,
Gave
way too
away
much
half
to
of
people
my
that wasn't
equity.
contributing. Right.
ANSI has a structure where he only gives out equity to those who contribute capital or expertise, unless they're highly involved in it. So there's different ways of doing things, but at the end of the day, is how can you ensure the majority equity? And one thing about that, Nancy, I want to touch on is that people assume, like you said, they can exit with 60%. That is a fallacy. Even if you exit with 10%, I mean, what's 10% of $1 billion, right? That's 100 million. So another aspect that is very important, and it really made me think, but as he told me, the more complex your idea is, the easier it is to get funding. I mean, what is really the excitement for an investor if it's a 1, 2, 3 step thing, right? They like complexity, they love innovation. If you can incorporate innovation and some aspects of it, even better. Can you touch on that a little?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Well, I just seen that a lot of people talked about exiting at 1 billion, and I had a plan laid out that would actually get us to exit at 1 billion. And when I started, the more I looked at my plan, and the more I heard other people talk about exiting at 1 billion and owning 55, 60% of their company, I was like, how many companies are out there that are billion-dollar companies where the founder, CEO, has that much? I'm like, there's not many, right? In fact, I only came across one, which is I gave in an earlier example,
Mhm.
Dyson, the vacuum company, right? So aside from him, I don't know many other founders that were able to pull that off. So, but also when people talk like that, it also highlights the fact that they don't really know as much as they think they do, right? So I really do not engage in conversation as much as I used to because it's just a waste of my time. But you have to be a little bit more realistic. And the caveat is you're not putting anything into this to start it off, right? So if someone is coming into a venture, they're starting something and they have their own capital, they're bringing in a million, 10 million. That's very different than someone who's starting out, independent, fundless, independent sponsor, right? And you've built something to the tune of 1 billion with not using your own capital at first, and you're thinking you're going to exit at 1 billion. I mean, I'm sorry, at with 60, 50, 60% of it. I just
Right.
don't see it happening. It's just not reality. And why would you be mad at owning 10% if you're the majority shareholder, which is my aim when I exit, right? 20% max I might own, but if I exit with 10% and I'm the majority shareholder, I have no problems with that whatsoever, especially not putting my own capital into it. Obviously, later on, as we buy more deals, I'm a bit more liquid. I can actually be, my own GP. I'm sorry, I could be a LP in my fund, right? And then I get a lot more attractive returns that way. But until that time, you just have to play your part. But for you to get there, you're going to have to give up some equity to bring that first investor, second, third investor on for you to close your deal. And depending on how complex your thesis or investment strategy is, you're going to need a lot more money than someone else. But that's why a lot of people start out with something that's a low barrier to entry, right? And a lot of people do not do healthcare. If they do healthcare, they just follow the basic model of, hey, let's just buy this, and then we're going to exit here. We're going to flip it in a couple years. They don't really try to tackle a major problem, which is like, inefficiencies in healthcare or the delivery system to from providers to patients as far as medicine. They don't really talk about things like that, and that's not their aim, which is it's okay. But if you're not really tackling something, like that, how are you going to exit at $1 billion? Because in healthcare, more and more companies are buying out these, single practices and rolling them up. There are a lot of roll up activities in healthcare right now. So if you're not really solving a real problem and you're just bunching something together just to, exit, how much are you going to really exit in 5 years without any disruption? That's how I see it. So, uh, you have to be realistic with that approach when you're talking about exiting at $1 billion, retaining a majority shareholder. It's okay, but 50, 60% is just a little bit unrealistic.
Right. Adding to that, of course, there's options such as equity buybacks and whatnot, but ultimately the most important factor is you being the majority shareholder. As long as you own the majority percentage of shares, regardless of what that percentage may be, you're still going to be the owner. You're still going to be a decision maker. You never want to put yourself in a position where you're going to
What is
lose out.
what is the largest shareholder of Sony? How much percentages does he own?
1.84%,
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
equivalent to 24.5 million shares.
How many shares do Sony have?
1.2 billion.
Thank you.
And these are things you got to take into consideration. These big companies, you may assume they own everything. No, 1%, 2%.
Hmm.
But I
But
mean,
how
what's
much is
the
that
guy
percentage?
after him though? First guy is 1.84. Next guy is 0.79, 0.42, 0.3.
Hmm.
Is about being majority shareholder. And you may be like, how does he own so little? Well, you got to also think about it. Institutional investors, the public that are buying shares, even though they own 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 20 shares, but it's millions of individuals being spread out across. So as long as you're still holding the majority concentration of that, regardless of that amount, you're still going to be in a good position. You never want to put yourself in. I mean, we've seen other companies that are worth 100 million, billions of dollars, and the trend we see is anywhere between 1 to 10% really is a majority shareholder.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Great, great. Look, with that being said, let's wrap up here. We have another show later on tonight. Real quick, Jeremy Harbour will be coming on later. I'm sorry, tomorrow, not tonight. He's actually in Dubai right now, and 8 p.m. Dubai is actually 4 a. I'm sorry, 8 p.m. here in Eastern time is actually 4 a.m. in
4 a.m.
Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
So the show it has moved from today to tomorrow. It will be at 8 a.m. So I know it's a little bit early. If you can catch it, great live. If not, don't worry. We'll have the replay. But that being said, let's just end this here and we'll get back on later on today.